this episode, I talked to Travis Fountain, a talented artist in New York who just kind of found himself tattooing about 3 years ago. Travis had a lot of great things to say about the struggles that come with being an artist and how to keep your confidence when battling the self-doubt that we all face, and the new challenges as he went from a medium like paper to skin. I love the way he approaches his design process and trying to capture the story of each client in every tattoo. He's got a really cool style that's a sort of illustrative surrealism, black and gray. Definitely go check out his work. His Instagram is @fountain.nyc. My name is Jake Berry, and this is The Fine Line. Your Instagram, there's not a lot of information on there about you.
That's true. You know, I've wondered if that's... I don't know. I've never really felt the desire to make the page about me, you know? So it's tough. But I know that it's definitely a good thing to do, kind of career-wise. Like, people want to see more of you. They want to know more about you.
Yeah. Do you just, is that like, so that's like a thought-out choice you made? Like, I don't really want to do that. Or is it you just don't feel comfortable, maybe?
It's more like I don't like... It's not even that I'm avoiding doing it, like out of some principle. I just never really feel the desire to do so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just don't. It would be work to do so, and I'm kind of lazy about it. Like I know I should.
Yeah.
And I will start sharing more, you know, and including more of my personal life. But
I watched that video that you made. It's pinned up at the top, and that's pretty cool. That's a little introduction into who you are, I think. That's cool.
Yeah. I was excited about that for that exact reason. I was like, you know, some of my friends told me, they're like, man, you don't even have a single picture of you. Like, people are really just shooting in the dark. Like, just from a like a comfort perspective for clients showing up, they like to have some sort of idea.
Yeah, I get that.
Like, I had one client come before I had anything up there at all for people to see that they're really about me. And he was like, man, for some reason I thought you were going to be like a 45-year-old man. I was like, oh, really?
That's funny. No, it's cool. It's all about the tattoos. I think that's not a bad thing. But tell me, like, just to give everyone kind of a little bit of an insight into your background and how you started, and you know what got you into tattooing. How long have you been doing it? All that good stuff.
I've always thought it was I've always appreciated tattoo artists and thought of it as this super cool thing because I've always drawn a lot. You know, I've been drawing and painting since I was a little kid. But, you know, I always thought of tattooing as like, it's amazing that those guys can do that. You know, I can't do that. Because at the time, you know, when you draw in pencil, all of my little techniques and things I've learned over time, I rely on the eraser so much, at least at that point in time before I started. And I just, I don't know, it never really crossed my mind as like a possible career path. So I started off, I was actually a mechanical engineer for like 2.5 years before I met Snuffy. And Snuffy kind of yanked me out of that world. And
oh, cool.
Yeah. It was pretty abrupt. When I met him, he was working just kind of solo out of this huge space. I mean, he had like an entire building all to himself.
Crazy.
And then he was tattooing a friend of mine. And my friend just texted me like, hey, you should stop by. I'm getting this super cool tattoo, and it's like in Williamsburg near your apartment. So I was just stopping by on the way home from work, and I was like, what is this? Like, who is this guy? What is this place? You know, it was so cool. And I just happened to have this printout. I would use the big printers at work to print out references for things I wanted to draw, because I always like to have the same size reference so I could glance back and forth.
Nice.
So I had that in my hand, and he was like, what is that for? I'm like, oh, it's just, you know, I like to draw. You know, it's someone to draw it. He's like, let me see your drawings. I showed him, and he was like, these are really good. Like, you know, you should tattoo.
Wow.
I remember like laughing, like, hilarious, dude. That's, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And so did he teach you?
Yeah. So that I met him that night, and then I kind of left, and it just stuck in my head, like, you know, this super cool tattoo artist guy told me I should tattoo, and that's when I started to become more of a tangible idea, because I really didn't like my job that I was in. I had all sorts of plans to leave it. I was working with another friend of mine who works in the local 600, which is like the camera union in New York to shoot TV and movies and things like that. And he was helping me get into the union because I wanted to get into the art department in film, because I just wanted to do something more creative.
Wow.
So that was kind of in the process when I met Snuff. But then when the pandemic started, I was like working from home, you know, and I just bought a $50 machine on Amazon, did a couple practice skin tattoos, and then sent them to him on Instagram and was like, hey, just wanted to show you, you know, taking your advice a bit. And then he called me up like the next day and he's like, congratulations, I will take you as an apprentice type of thing.
Oh my God. That's cool. Wow. Yeah. And then you just decided, all right, I'm going to go for this then.
Yeah. And there was a bit of urgency on it because he had plans to go to LA for like the whole summer at this point. So he had like 2 weeks left in New York. So he's like, if you can come in tomorrow, like I'm going to work with you and get you started for 2 weeks, and then I'm gonna leave and go to LA for the whole summer and just leave you with the keys to my space.
What the hell?
And then you'll just keep tattooing people and sending me pictures. And that was kind of how it all started.
Wow. So you were kind of left on your own straight away. Were you tattooing people then all summer?
All summer.
Really?
Yeah. But within that first 2 weeks, you know, Snuff's never been one to do anything the way other people do it.
Yeah.
You know, he just does everything his own way. And he was like, look, we're not going to do the whole, you know, apprenticeship approach where you watch for like 6 months. And he's like, I think I tattooed myself the second day.
Yeah.
So I came in, I quit my job like right away, showed up, and then he had me set up all the equipment. And he's like, okay, pick something. Now you're going to tattoo your leg.
Wow.
Okay. And then I tattooed myself, I think like 11 times within that 2 weeks.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, which was insane. Like, and I tell him, like, nowadays, I'm like, I can't believe that you had me do that.
Yeah,
like, not knowing me, or, you know, it's a crazy move. But he was like, he knew that he was going to leave. Yeah. And he wanted to get me through, like, the big fundamentals. And, you know, he wouldn't let me tattoo a friend until I was doing a tattoo on myself that was, like, decent enough, good enough for someone else.
That must have been terrifying for you, quitting your job and just going for it. But I guess you knew that you wanted to, but still at the same time you must have had a few moments.
Yeah, I almost feel like I take credit where it's not due when people say that it was kind of courageous to, you know, quit and pursue this dream, right? Because I was so done with that job. I just wanted an out, you know, and then I've got someone like Snuffy, and he's like, I'm going to take you and show you the ropes and pull you right in. It was, to me, it just made a ton of sense. It was like, oh, this is, you know, a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah.
And luckily my parents, my mom is an artist. She's a muralist. Cool. And she's, you know, she's all about following creative pursuits. And so
in this episode, I talked to Travis Fountain, a talented artist in New York who just kind of found himself tattooing about 3 years ago. Travis had a lot of great things to say about the struggles that come with being an artist and how to keep your confidence when battling the self-doubt that we all face, and the new challenges as he went from a medium like paper to skin. I love the way he approaches his design process and trying to capture the story of each client in every tattoo. He's got a really cool style that's a sort of illustrative surrealism, black and gray. Definitely go check out his work. His Instagram is @fountain.nyc. My name is Jake Berry, and this is The Fine Line. Your Instagram, there's not a lot of information on there about you.
That's true. You know, I've wondered if that's, I don't know. I've never really felt the desire to make the page about me, you know? So it's tough, but I know that it's definitely a good thing to do, kind of career-wise. Like, people want to see more of you. They want to know more about you.
Yeah. Do you just, is that like, so that's like a thought-out choice you made? Like, I don't really want to do that. Or is it you just don't feel comfortable, maybe?
It's more like I don't like, it's not even that I'm avoiding doing it, like out of some principle. I just never really feel the desire to do so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. It would be work to do so, and I'm kind of lazy about it. Like, I know I should.
Yeah.
And I will start sharing more, and including more of my personal life. But
I watched that video that you made. It's pinned up at the top, and that's pretty cool. That's a little introduction into who you are, I think. That's cool.
Yeah. I was excited about that for that exact reason. I was like, some of my friends told me, they're like, man, you don't even have a single picture of you. Like, people are really just shooting in the dark. Like, just from a comfort perspective for clients showing up, they like to have some sort of idea.
Yeah, I get that.
Like, I had one client come before I had anything up there at all for people to see that are really about me. And he was like, man, for some reason I thought you were going to be like a 45-year-old man. I was like, oh, really?
That's funny. No, it's cool. It's all about the tattoos. I think that's not a bad thing. But tell me, like, just to give everyone kind of a little bit of an insight into your background and how you started, and what got you into tattooing. How long have you been doing it? All that good stuff.
I've always thought it was I've always appreciated tattoo artists and thought of it as this super cool thing because I've always drawn a lot. I've been drawing and painting since I was a little kid. But, I always thought of tattooing as like, it's amazing that those guys can do that. I can't do that. Because at the time, when you draw in pencil, all of my little techniques and things I've learned over time, I rely on the eraser so much, at least at that point in time before I started. And I just, I don't know, it never really crossed my mind as like a possible career path. So I started off, I was actually a mechanical engineer for like 2.5 years before I met Snuffy. And Snuffy kind of yanked me out of that world. And
oh, cool.
Yeah. It was pretty abrupt. When I met him, he was working just kind of solo out of this huge space. I mean, he had like an entire building all to himself.
Crazy.
And then he was tattooing a friend of mine. And my friend just texted me like, hey, you should stop by. I'm getting this super cool tattoo. And it's like in Williamsburg near your apartment. So I was just stopping by on the way home from work. And I was like, what is this? Like, who is this guy? What is this place? It was so cool. And I just happened to have this printout. I would use the big printers at work to print out references for things I wanted to draw. Because I always like to have the same size reference so I could glance back and forth.
Nice. So
I had that in my hand, and he was like, what is that for? I'm like, oh, it's just, I like to draw. It's someone to draw it. He's like, let me see your drawings. I showed him, and he's like, these are really good. Like, you should tattoo.
Wow.
And I remember like laughing, like, hilarious, dude. That's yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And so did he teach you?
Yeah. So that I met him that night, and then I kind of left, and it just stuck in my head, like, this super cool tattoo artist guy told me I should tattoo, and that's when I started to become more of a tangible idea, because I really didn't like my job that I was in. I had all sorts of plans to leave it. I was working with another friend of mine who works in the local 600, which is like the camera union in New York, to shoot TV and movies and things like that. And he was helping me get into the union because I wanted to get into the art department in film, because I just wanted to do something more creative. Wow. So that was kind of in the process when I met Snuff. But then when the pandemic started, I was like working from home, and I just bought a $50 machine on Amazon, did a couple practice skin tattoos, and then sent them to him on Instagram and was like, hey, just wanted to show you, taking your advice a bit. And then he called me up like the next day, and he's like, congratulations, I will take you as an apprentice, type of thing.
Oh my God. That's cool. Wow. Yeah. And then you just decided, all right, I'm going to go for this then.
Yeah. And there was a bit of urgency on it because he had plans to go to LA for like the whole summer at this point. So he had like 2 weeks left in New York. So he's like, if you can come in tomorrow, like, I'm going to work with you and get you started for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to leave and go to LA for the whole summer and just leave you with the keys to my space.
What the hell?
And then you'll just keep tattooing people and sending me pictures. And that was kind of how it all started.
Wow. So you were kind of left on your own straight away. Were you tattooing people then all summer?
All summer.
Really?
Yeah. But within that first 2 weeks, Snuff's never been one to do anything the way other people do it.
Yeah.
He just does everything his own way. And he was like, look, we're not going to do the whole apprenticeship approach where you watch for like 6 months and
Yeah.
he's like, I think I tattooed myself the second day.
Yeah.
So I came in, I quit my job like right away,
Wow.
showed up, and then he had me set up all the equipment, and he's like, okay, pick something. Now you're going to tattoo your leg.
Wow.
Okay. And then I tattooed myself, I think like 11 times within that 2 weeks.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, which was insane. Like, and I tell him, like, nowadays, I'm like, I can't believe that you had me do that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
not knowing me, or, it's a crazy move. But he was like, he knew that he was going to leave.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get me through, like, the big fundamentals. And,
Yeah.
he wouldn't let me tattoo a friend until I was doing a tattoo on myself that was, like, decent enough, good enough for someone else.
That must have been terrifying for you, quitting your job and just going for it. But I guess you knew that you wanted to, but still at the same time you must have had a few moments.
Yeah, I almost feel like I take credit where it's not due when people say that it was kind of courageous to, quit and pursue this dream, right? Because I was so done with that job. I just wanted an out, and then I've got someone like Snuffy, and he's like, I'm going to take you and show you the ropes and pull you right in. It was, to me, it just made a ton of sense.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is a no-brainer.
Right, yeah.
And luckily my parents, my mom is an artist. She's a muralist.
Cool.
And she's all about following creative pursuits. And so when I told her I had this opportunity, she was just like immediately like, quit, go do it.
Really? Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you need that support, like someone else just saying like, yeah, this is a good idea. You need to do this, But
totally. Yeah, it's hard to self-assure when you're making a big decision.
For sure.
Just another voice of someone whose opinion you value like that. It's huge.
Yeah. So that's been like 2.5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, almost 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, man.
Yeah.
Jeez. I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell in your work,
Thank you. I think it was just I spent an insane amount of time really learning how to draw. Like I would do my side hustle through college, through even when I was working as an engineer. I was still doing it because I liked it, but I was doing like photorealistic kind of pencil drawings. People would send like wedding photos.
Wow.
And then I would just spend like a week just recreating it to as close of a match as I could from the source.
Wow.
I think that's just fantastic practice for tattooing, really.
Absolutely.
Like looking at each kind of little shape that makes up this bigger image, and so it felt like a very convenient crossover.
And how was that? How was that for you? Like not having that eraser all of a sudden?
Yeah. So it's funny, that was less of a like roadblock than I thought it would be. I kind of just, what was really a lot harder than I thought was just getting used to, like, my hands had no familiarity with this machine, and like just trying to do, it took so long to get comfortable with just holding it and how to do everything in rhythm. I was so used to, when drawing with pencil, you can rest the pencil right against the paper still, and then make little edge. You can't do that with the machine because it's like, it's a time-based thing now. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything has to be some sort of fluidity in the motions.
Smooth. Yeah.
So that took, that was like, I remember when I was first getting started, I was convinced that Snuff was going to see that I was trash and be like, all right, you know what? Maybe this isn't working out. And I had just quit my job.
Yeah.
So, because I didn't know him at all. And knowing him now, he'd never do that. But that was kind of a big concern. I was like, wow, I'm really bad at this.
Well, like it's weird because like when people ask me that are artists or draw or whatever, I think that's like a big thing for people, like when you're thinking about tattooing, like they're like, but it's permanent, you can't go back. And I don't know, there's something weird about it. Like I'm like, yeah, but it's not that easy to like get it in there, so it's like there actually is, I think you're right. There is like, you do have to have that like fluidity, I guess, but it's almost like I kind of explain it sometimes as if you're like sculpting or something. It's like you're kind of just chipping away at it, and like adding layers and adding layers, and it's not so like,
yeah, it's small increments, right? Like you're working on one little increment at a time. So there's no capacity for some grand error.
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? When you're
exactly. But
yeah.
no, I know what you mean. Like, I don't know. For some reason, it just doesn't transfer over the same, does it? Like, I nearly would make more mistakes if I had a pen in my hand and I was drawing on paper than I would if I had a tattoo machine. You know?
It does feel that way, and there's something about the process of doing it itself that, as long as you're sufficiently like, kind of zoned in on what you're working on, there's just no room for like worrying about its permanence, or you just draw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not like you're constantly avoiding this this thought about like, oh, I hope I don't mess this up. You're just working on something at a time. Like you're occupied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find did you ever get into like, say you start a tattoo and like some panic would set in, you know, if you were like doing something that, you know, you would normally be drawing and you wouldn't have that one, there's not someone waiting on you, there's not someone watching your every move, they're not like gonna have to wear it forever, so it's less of a stress. But having that, there's like these panic moments when you are like maybe halfway through a tattoo, you're like, I can't finish this, I have to leave.
Oh yeah, man, dude, when I was first starting, there would always be these moments of like, you know, it was always like in the beginning of the tattoo, before there was something completed to look at and be like, okay,
work
that looks
off
good.
of, yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, like, because, you know, you start encountering people's skin is always different. Sometimes like when you're new and you got some client where their skin is reacting real weird,
yeah,
there's always that panic, because you don't want to convey any of that anxiety,
right? You're holding it in.
yeah, so it's all internal and you're oh no,
yeah, you're on your own.
But yeah, nowadays I've just had enough examples of having that anxiety and then having the end product turn out the way I want, that the validity of the anxiety has kind of
goes
lost
away.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So now I'll be like working on something difficult skin, or you know, that thought comes into my head of like, oh god, you know, this is garbage so far.
Right.
But then I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just not. Like it won't be.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm done with this, I'm gonna love it like I always do.
Yeah, because I think that's the biggest difference for me. Like just having, or like, you know, during the lockdowns, I was doing fake skin just to kind of like stay busy and do a couple projects, and it was actually really fun. But that was the main thing I noticed when I started tattooing fake skin. I was like, man, there's no stress. Like there's no pressure, anxiety, you know, like, you know, not that clients put you under that intentionally or anything, you know, but just you have it, I think, just because naturally, you know.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest thing that I noticed. Like the biggest difference between just drawing and tattooing someone is that like those moments where I'm like, I can't describe it any other way than just like panic moment, you know, and not sure how I'm going to get through it. But like you said, you always do, you know, and
you always do.
And I've found ways to like kind of, you know, focus. And I've heard other tattoo artists say to just like focus on just this little bit that you're working on, and just complete that. You know, like don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the whole piece as a whole. You know, just like get this little bit good, and then just get this little bit good, and that's really helped me a lot. But what's your process like? Would you work on like outline first, or all your blacks first, or would you finish as you go, kind of starting down, working your way up?
Yeah, I kind of finish as I go, so I'll start at the bottom and just work my way up. But I kind of like fully saturate a tone like all the way out. It's just the way I always drew with pencil, because I was trying to recreate these photographs. I wasn't necessarily, you know, starting out with my big shapes and layering, shading, and going back up to the top and slowly working it in a more kind of formal way. I was just straight like replication.
Copy,
you know? I'd start here and I'd go back and forth until it was perfect match.
Yeah.
And I just moved down throughout the piece. So I think that too, just kind of influenced my approach to tattoos. I just start at the bottom and work my way up, which sometimes too, like, you know, let's say you're working on some figure where there's going to be a dark background or something like that. Sometimes it's tough to put the tone of the foreground in to where it should be before the darker
Yeah.
background makes it kind of feel different.
Yeah.
You got to just trust. Just look at that particular area and be like, okay, it's still not dark enough.
Yeah.
Even though it'll then feel much lighter once the darker background goes in.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like those illusions where it's like these two grays are the same gray, but because it's on a darker background, it looks much lighter in this one than it does in this one. And I think that would throw me off a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. That illusion that you brought up, I've actually showed people that before in terms of, to me, that is as evidence of such freedom that you have in creating the illusion of whatever you'd like.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, just because that shadow's there in the right place, our brains not only ignore, but completely, readjust the tones of the image itself to make more sense.
That's interesting, yeah. So it doesn't need to be a match.
Yeah, I mean, the closer you can get to what is a more complete illusion of form or whatever it is that you're trying to portray with with this use of tone, the more real it will be. But it's amazing how if you have just a couple shadows from something on all in the same direction, our brains are so used to recognizing those patterns and saying, okay, the light's coming from over there, and this is round, and they're separated from that.
Yeah.
You can just take advantage of all these little cues to make a more convincing illusion.
Yeah, our brain will just complete the story from there.
Totally, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a good example of that would be those illustrations where the shadow is almost like the darkest part of the shadow would be at the starting point of the shadow, and then as it continues, it lightens up. Do you know what I'm
absolutely
what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And where in real life it wouldn't look like that. You know what I mean? But it's you're just seeing the shape of the shadow.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It almost looks nicer than it does in real life, basically.
Yeah, that's the fun thing is I try to do as much of that as I can, is just doing it the way, when you're drawing something or you're trying to make, trust what feels right, what looks best, give yourself that freedom. There's always kind of a give or take with trying to make things as real as possible, but a lot of times reality just doesn't look as nice, especially not with a tattoo.
Sometimes what I've been doing lately is, I might get close to being done or, 3/4 of the way or something, and I'll start looking at my tattoo more than I'm looking at my reference, because as I start to see the tattoo, I'm like, I can kind of decide what's missing from here,
Totally.
I don't I guess it goes to what we're saying. I don't necessarily need to follow that exactly, because sometimes it is it actually looks nice without any more shading right here or whatever, just to leave it or make that decision because of the way it looks on skin, rather than trying to go line for line on with the reference.
It's funny now that you say that, it kind of feels like there's almost this oscillation between completely ignoring the image that you're working to create, right? Like when you first start, you're looking at individual shapes. You're looking at a shadow here in a certain shape, and you just put that shape in very blindly. You're not seeing the whole face that you're creating. You're just seeing a small piece of it. But then eventually, once the illusion of that whole face is there, now you can look at it as an image, and then you can work on that image.
Make decisions from there.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about what your design process looks like.
Yeah, design process. So I definitely encourage in my booking link and really in just my whole profile, I pretty much try to share the custom work pretty exclusively to encourage more people to write in with stories about themselves or songs they want represented, or more concepts that they want me to make art about than requests for particular imagery. So a lot of what I do is that. And I like to, and most of this I learned, Snuffy was doing this when I started working with him. He was taking stories from people, and he really encouraged the idea of, you're an artist, make art. Don't try to make a tattoo, because when you're starting off with anything new, you familiar with what tattoos look like and what, you know, the coolest tattooers on Instagram are doing, and that stuff is so infectious because you automatically, you want to be good at something, you look at who's doing it the best and you're inclined to do it like they are. So I think Snuff was really helpful in, you know, breaking down that instinct of mine. You know, I'd put something together and he'd be like, why'd you make it like this? I'm like, oh, because it's cool. Why do you think it's cool? Because it looks like this guy, you know? And be like, I guess you're right. So he kind of encouraged to just drop back and make whatever you want to make, you know? So I like to do that still with as much as I can. Just like read.
Do you feel like that limited your clientele in the beginning, or even still? Do you feel like that kind of limited who would want to get tattooed?
No doubt, yeah. It's not the most efficient route to like a steady flow of clients. It's niche, you know? But his point was always, you're not tattooing to just do more tattooing. You're like an artist finding out what kind of artist they are, you know? Just if you're going to tattoo your art on someone, great. But he put a lot of emphasis on just finding your way as organically as possible, I guess. And this really allows for that. You know, when someone requests something specific, you put that together, but you don't know where it would have gone if you didn't start with those kind of bounds. So there's a lot to gain from it. There's also a lot, like, it took a very long time to just get a steady flow of clients, you know?
Right. Yeah. But I suppose there was like that level of integrity that stuck with you, that you wanted to continue down that road of being an artist and have that.
Yeah, it's I don't even look at it as like an integrity thing, like there's any lack of integrity in any other way of doing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not that it's any
but
more
say
righteous
for yourself,
in the path
probably.
of artistry. Yeah, it's more like if you leave it wide open, you don't know where it's going to go. And I love that approach. and I do that with just every appointment. I try to read through whatever was written to me and just kind of really, really make this conscious effort to pretend I'm typing it into my computer. Like I'm messaging me, you know? Like, what is this person feeling that they're saying? Because everyone uses different words, you know? Like some people are more storytellers than others, and regardless of whatever they write and how they write things, if you kind of just try to put yourself from their perspective as immediately as possible, you can feel what it is they're trying to express, even if their words aren't so poetic, you know? And then from that, I just think about, all right, what does it feel like to be them? That's kind of the root of my process. What does it feel like? And that's where the comparisons come in. Feels like this. That's kind of like this, you know? But if you start with the feeling, it's like infinitely relatable, because we've all felt the same way as people in any other position, regardless of the context.
Right.
You know?
It's why someone writes a song. It's why poetry's made. Yeah, everything.
Because the feelings are all like universal. The specific life context and the actual like titles on all the things that go into some experience for somebody. That's what I think people get hung up on, even in general, of just feeling so separate from each other. You know what I mean?
That's
like we're all aware of.
That's pretty powerful. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's you can relate to it more than you think you can, even though you aren't going through those specific scenarios, or you might not relate to the individual situation, but you can relate to the feeling of what's happening and what that might feel like. Or,
that experience, you know? It's kind of like we all have very similar experiences with very different words to describe them.
Right, yeah. So, okay, that leaves me with a couple questions. One, would your process be like you would draw or come up with a design and send it to this person and allow them to decide whether or not they want to get tattooed? Or is it you don't know really what it's going to be, but why don't you book in and come come see if you like it, and what happens there?
It's the latter. I don't send anything before the day of the appointment. I just
Is there room for them to make changes? And
absolutely. And I tell them, I tell every client, you're going to come in the day of the session. I only tattoo once a day, even if it's a quick tattoo. And I just let them know, like, there's plenty, all the time we need. We'll make any changes together. I think the problem comes in with if you send things in advance, people will see it, have an initial reaction, and then their mind starts going. You know what I mean? And 2-3 days later, there's like 4 or 5 emails with, can we add this, and it strays from what would have been the better version of it. Like too much time looking at it and thinking is just not. I don't know. I don't think it's helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree, which is so funny because it's on you forever. So you'd think that, like, if you were gonna make a change a few days later, that would make sense. But I do understand what where you're going with that, and I'm the same way. So like my approach is, because you said something earlier that like people use different words and people sometimes don't communicate the best, especially over email or text or whatever. So I always find I can get the best idea of where someone's coming from in person.
Totally. Yeah.
Even if it's like they're just looking for something that looks cool. Okay, I feel like I can read that straight away.
Yeah.
Or as opposed to someone who's like, no, this means a lot to me. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I want it to make, I want it to be right. And so that's why, like, in person, I feel like I get that. Like, even if it's a 5-minute conversation, and then I can go back and kind of make those, make adjustments to my design or make suggestions or whatever. So, like, do you feel like you might start on a design and then meet the person and be like, this isn't for them?
I haven't had that really happen. It's because I think I do... Like, I think people get a feel for the fact that what they see on my page is all like kind of similar in a way, but very different one to the next. So if someone's writing in, I think they're typically just the types of people that just want something like original and kind of surreal. And so when they see like when I put something together that is this visual representation of something that connects to their story, I think people very quickly are just... Yeah, they feel that connection.
Excited
to it.
About it.
Yeah. And then like you said, working with clients the day of the session together to go over, what do you like the most about this, and what's anything about it that bothers you? Like, let's make some changes together. I do a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what happens then if someone says, like, look, I really like where you're going with this, and I like the idea, but I really just want it to look like this one, and they show you something on Instagram. How do you handle that?
I'm trying to think about the times where I've made the most drastic alterations to the designs. I've done some pretty much like reworking, maybe once or twice, but it's I don't know. I haven't had it happen all that much. I think it's because the way that I kind of, one of the things I like to do with the designs is have like a cohesive scene almost, where everything has its place and it works together, like perspective wise. You know what I mean? I kind of like assign like one perspective to the kind of composition itself and build everything from there. So I think it's already different than what would be more like a kind of collage or decorative thing where there's a lot more fluidity in moving the elements around amongst each other. It almost gets locked in place by the kind of singular perspective where things have to coincide. So,
I get that. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So the changes that I make with clients typically are within the realm of this little scene I've already set up, So it'll be like, oh, instead of these, birds over here, can we put something like this? And it's like, oh yeah, totally, let's do that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's like people, it all kind of falls inside the bounds of the way it's already been set up instead of completely separate.
Okay. And like, let's say you're doing a design, okay? Because I've been here a lot where I'm doing a design and I'm like, man, I know how it's gonna look when I tattoo this. It's gonna look a lot nicer than this, okay? So, but do I spend the time right now to like make it look the way I want it to show the client so that they know where I'm going with it, or do I just say like, look, it's going to be something like this. Maybe show them a few examples of my work and be like, you know, this is I think you know where I'm going with it. And, you know, you're here because you trust me and all that kind of stuff. And I know that's probably the lazy approach, you know, just take the time, make the nice design, have it be finished, and then you can start tattooing. But like, for me, quite often I find myself being like, I really don't want to go in and clean up the hair cut out on this or whatever, you know. It's just like I know I'm going to do a nice job in this, and I know what I'm doing, and I know where I'm going with it. So should I just like get, you know what I mean, get the ball rolling now?
I think everybody kind of naturally finds like a certain degree of like rendering in the design itself that's enough to communicate to the client, right? Because that's all it's for, and for yourself. Like if you know what kind of reference you need, and if it looks, if the client can look at the design and kind of get it, you know, the way it's going to be. But I've got like a few things I say to every client before I show them the designs, you know, like this is a reference, you know, this is not fully rendered. So and I spend a ton of time, man, on the designs. Like they're pretty fully fleshed out. So it's like there are things that sometimes just don't look all that exciting flat on an iPad, but I know that they're gonna be cool in the tattoo. So sometimes you gotta tell the client, trust me, like this is gonna look awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trust involved, and I think that, I mean, it's obviously great to have your portfolio online for people to see and go, okay, yeah, obviously I can trust this guy because I've seen, you know, the work that they're doing, and it's quality work, and so obviously we're living in a time where that's beneficial to us. But would you suggest to an artist that is trying to maybe find their style, or like find something that you know, or maybe find their way to tattooing more of what they want to do and less of what they have to do to pay the bills or whatever, would you suggest to maybe like it's worth it to do less tattoos and do the ones that you want to do? Or like, say, if you're getting started, like, I guess it depends on where they're at in their career, but like, you know, if you're getting started and like you need to pay the bills, like what would you suggest to do there? You kind of went through that yourself, so how did you go about that?
Oh man, I think I didn't necessarily find the right balance, you know, in terms of like starting to like get everything moving. You know, I was really just focused on taking these very specific clientele that wanted something completely original. And so I think it was like a slow road for me. I guess it wasn't all that slow, but struggling, man, like financially for the first year, of course, because I was learning to tattoo as well. You know, I just started this Instagram page. It's got like a couple thousand followers and like not enough on there for people to have that trust for the freedom. Yeah. So I kind of like, you know, I was like, this is the way I'm going to do it. And it was, it wasn't exact. I don't think I would suggest my exact approach to it to someone getting started, because, you know, when it's your only job, you gotta keep the machine moving. So I think just, even if you've got a certain number, like maybe a good move is if you want to kind of explore a little bit with your tattoos and do something different that's outside the realm of normal things, the wanna-dos, I mean, are the move. So you do... You know, do your regular appointments. Yeah, and just work on some designs. And then you get that freedom of, like when you're working on the practice skin, that relaxed kind of creative. Because everyone's more creative than they give themselves credit for. Creativity is not really a thing you have. It's like a process. Like if you can just sufficiently relax and just mess around, just try things and pay attention to what you like, you just find out what you like, you know? You don't like premeditate your style. I think that's something that people get hung up on, is like, I can't find my style, because they think they have to like think it into existence. You know what I mean? Like you just mess around aimlessly, like with no direction. And then you notice, you pay attention to what you like that you're doing. Like, oh, I kind of like the way that looks. I'm going to do a little more of that. You find it, you know?
Yeah. It's a discovery.
Yeah, and the impediment to that is when you feel like creativity is something you either have or you don't, there's this like internal dialogue of kind of fear around creative processes, because when you start working on something and you don't like the way it looks and you just like feel like it's bad, right? This voice in your head is like, oh, you suck, you shouldn't, this isn't good, you're not creative, this is, so you're kind of, you're almost like observed by that part of you the whole time, commenting on everything. If you can ignore that, you get this childlike kind of freedom to just mess around. There's nothing.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I think sometimes that voice has helped me, and like it kind of pushes you. You know what I mean? But I guess there is that balance of not beating yourself up, and not knocking yourself because you're not exactly where you want to be at that moment, but just like maybe accepting this is where I'm at, and it's a good place.
Yeah. And I think the voice, like the way you said, sometimes it's helpful. There's like this small distinction in what the voice is saying that's huge difference. Like if you're doubting the work that you're working on, if you're like I think this could be better, that's like completely helpful. You know what I mean? Like you can just keep iterating and like, no, I don't think this is the best version of itself. And that's like a positive, you know what I mean? You can doubt your work in a healthy way, but when it's, I'm no good, I can't, like, I'm not good enough for this, I'm not creative enough for this, that's just pure, like, that's just the worst thing. There's nothing to gain from that.
I suppose you always have to leave room for, if you believe that you have more potential, right? So I think that's like the difference. If I believe that I'm potentially better than what I'm doing right now, I think that's the more positive way to look at it, because it gives you room to move forward rather than I'm not capable of being better, right? You know. So okay, let's move a little bit to more like the technical side of things. So when you were learning to tattoo, I'm sure Snuffy gave you a handful of inks and machines to try or whatever, and this is what I use. But did you go through a cycle of trying a bunch of different stuff, or did you kind of just quickly find? I know a lot of people take the approach of like, just give me anything and I'll just try to find the best way to do it with what I got.
Snuff actually forced me to use all the different machines that he had. He'd be like, today you're using this machine, because it was different. Because he didn't want me to ever be stuck in that position where I don't have the one machine I've always used, and it's like, what am I going to do? I've only ever used this, So I definitely tried a handful of different machines and different needles and things like that in the beginning. And then I kind of got used to the Spectra Zion is the machine I use nowadays. And I just use that just about all the time. But I know that if I had to use a different machine, you'd figure out what's different real quick and just kind of adjust from there. And I think that comfort comes from the fact that I did mess around with different ones. But I've also always, whenever I have the opportunity to talk to artists that I see their work, I'm like, how did they do that? Like I want to know. And I think that the community is a lot more open to sharing information like that than a more traditional standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, I think traditional tattooing was super secretive, and like you got a way of going about things. Like you don't share that because that's what you have that they don't.
Right.
But,
Right.
I had I learned from so many really talented artists really early on. Like Oscar Carmo, I know you had him on this show as well. I think my third week, right, like after the 2 weeks with Snuffy leaves, and then Oscar was shooting that course that he did, that tattoo mastery course, and Snuff coordinated me going over to help him with that. So I just helped him set up, and so I got to watch him and really tell him, hey, these are all the things I don't know, because he's making a course to teach people to tattoo. I was kind of a great example of why is it what angle are you holding the mag on? Is it perfectly square, or is it, you know what I mean? All these things that might not even come to mind as someone as experienced as he is. It's hard to remember what you don't know,
Right. So it was mutually beneficial then.
I mean, it was way more beneficial to me than it was to him, right? I was mostly just helping him move supplies around. But But no, I mean, I'm really grateful for things like that. And yeah, I'm definitely inquisitive, you know? If someone's doing amazing things, like, I want to know all about it. I want to know how.
Yeah, that's cool, man. You got a great start. Not a lot of people. I mean, that's rare to come across
for
that.
real. Yeah. It is. I feel unbelievably lucky. You know.
Yeah. So you're almost 3 years into it. So then where do you see this going now for you? Like what's down the road? What's let's say 10 years from now? Like where do you see yourself?
Definitely a larger emphasis on just fine art. I've been doing a lot of drawings, and I've got just this huge list of these ideas that I've had that to me I want to give them a bigger scale than just a tattoo, and that mean a lot to me, and a lot of them that coincide in terms of themes. And I've put together kind of these different series that I want to do, and I do a lot of these big pencil drawings, but I really want to paint more. So I actually signed up for a oil painting course at the New York School of Arts. It starts in May.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like 9 weeks.
So like you want to go into color?
Yeah, for some for paintings. Yeah.
Very
but I don't
cool.
think I'll tattoo in color. It's just such a different ballgame, bro. Like you said, you know, working with clients' skin and saturation, and it's just so different. Yeah. It's like a whole different thing. Yeah.
And knowing how certain colors are going to heal and all that stuff. But that's interesting. So, because you're saying you started doing like pencil drawings, and you still do pencil drawings, and you tattoo in black and gray, but you want to get into painting, but you want to branch out into the color.
Yeah, and it's not something I haven't done at all before. You know, I've made all sorts of different like paintings in the past, and I've always worked with, I don't know, I even like Photoshop. Like I love all the things you do in Photoshop. My uncle's a graphic designer, and I learned the fundamentals of that program from him when I was an engineer, just because I loved like making weird things like with my friends, and you know what I mean? So I made all sorts of posters, and I think I definitely don't have any classical training in color theory or anything like that, but then again, I don't in anything, you know. I've never really taken art classes. There's so many resources. Like YouTube's amazing.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
But I, you know, when I thought about these paintings I want to do, my first inclination was to go online and just look up like people teaching me how to do these classical oil painting styles, because that's the course I found is in like Renaissance oil painting. Not really sure what goes into that process, but I'm gonna learn. But
that's cool.
I'm excited.
So would you like would your goal to be kind of maybe focusing on like one big piece for a period of time, and then, you know, like not have ongoing projects, or is it just kind of like, because like it's just that, like what you're describing is very different to being a tattoo artist. Like as a tattoo artist, you show up and you're completing something every day, if maybe over a couple days, but it's like they're in, that you do a tattoo and then they leave, right? So it's like I've always loved the idea of working on a bigger project and like being able to come back to it over like a long period of time. But is that something you're thinking of, or is it kind of...
and that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. You know, I've been, you know, these drawings that I'm doing take like maybe like, I don't know, if I were to just sit down and do only that, like a week, but that's never the case. So it gets spread out over a few months of just when I have the time for it, I'll sit down. But I think that there's something beautiful too about the consistency, like the demand time-wise with tattooing. You know, if you constantly have appointments coming up, it forces you to just sit down and just create, and you don't know what you're going to find, and something new happens, and that triggers an idea for a painting, and now your list grows for these ideas for bigger works.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the more time you spend just doing that creative process, which is really open, it's mutually beneficial. So I don't really look at the tattooing as like a big distraction from the other things. I think it's all tied together, you know. But so you do need to find that balance of time where you're not taking appointments and you're not you know?
Yeah. I mean, or like, yeah, I saw this artist who recently sold a painting at an auction for like $500,000.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think it was his highest, you know, I think that's the highest he's ever sold a painting for. And I was like, geez, you know, I would love to just spend a year on on just one project and sell it for a crap ton of money. And
sell it for like,
and then like and then like go on a little trip and then come back and start a different project and work on that. Like that's what I mean. It's so different to tattooing, where it's like, man, I'm focusing on like 4 projects this week, and completing them all, and that takes a lot of mental energy, and just throwing yourself into a new project every day, I feel like is like, it's a lot, and like
totally.
The more I'm in this industry, or like the more I'm doing tattoos, I'm like, how am I doing how do I show up, and how am I able to like give myself to each project every day? And you are obviously, you show up and you're like, cool, I'm here and we're doing this, but I just when you compare it to these artists that are doing other mediums that don't have to do that, don't have to I know there's like other jobs that, maybe if you're a graphic designer or you're working on animation or something like that, then maybe there's that intensity as well. But do you get what I'm saying about
Absolutely.
Just having that freedom to like, maybe we should just start painting?
Yeah, I think
the
answer is it can't be black and white. You can't like take this long shot on, all right, I'm going to stop, essentially cut off my income stream for like 6 months. So you got to do them in tandem, And then eventually if your fine art pieces are supporting, like, I think you'll build that separation of time as it occurs in terms of how it's supporting you. If you work on some art on the side and then you sell a piece for something that can give you even more time to work on more art outside of tattooing, then you get more time to make another piece that can, and it'll kind of bridge that gap. Yeah. But
I think it's
I don't know how it works,
Let me know if you figure it out. No, I just think it's I think it's cool. I for me right now, like, I think where I want to go with things is like, I don't know yet, right? So I don't really know. I know people have like long-term plans, and I kind of have ideas, but what I do know is that like I want to keep building what I have right now. And continue to like work and focus on like our brand, so my wife and I do this together. So she doesn't tattoo, but she basically, me and her run the business together. And but like what we keep talking about is like, okay, keep focusing on your brand. And this is something that Snuffy kind of said, and I've heard a few other people say, is like, just shift laterally, shift sideways. So whatever you're working on is like, you continue to work on it, not knowing what's next, and then as soon as you find that thing you're doing next, you don't have to start from the ground up. Like you're moving sideways,
Totally.
In other words, a quote I saw today was like, I'm going to read it instead of trying to memorize it. I have it pulled up here. It's good because it kind of, it said, don't be afraid to start over again. This time you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience, which I thought was good, because I guess I don't know why I'm saying this, because I don't want it to sound like I don't want to tattoo anymore.
No, yeah, and that's the funny thing about it, right? Like, but that's the nature of being an artist. You're always thinking about what's next. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean you're not grateful for exactly what you're doing at the moment, but we're always inclined to dream. You know what I mean? And then think about what can I do next? What do I want to do? And I think that's an important thing to note as well. Like, I think sometimes there's this weird like pressure on tattoo artists to do just that, to be like, well, right now I'm just tattooing, but if I really want to be like an artist, I have to make these separate things and take this whole other route. but there's no, like, that's all just made up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's
if you love what
true.
you're doing and you're
Yeah.
honing this, if you're constantly getting better at making tattoos and making them more and more brilliant, like, there's no reason to feel like that you should be doing anything else. You know, I think everyone should just go with do what you want to do. But when you want to do something, don't ignore that. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is what I think about it. It's like we live in such a cool time where everything's available to everyone at all times, right? And as